Welcome! Patch 04 brings tons of changes, especially to Ascendancies, overhauling them wholesale. In this video, we're going to go over the important changes with the respective in-game visualization because I don't just assume you know everything by heart. Let's begin with two huge points, the player changes and afterwards right away the Ascendancy changes. For player changes, we got Tailwind now grants 1% increased movement speed, 2% increased skill speed, used to be 3, and 10% increased evasion rating, previously 15. However, they also added prevent 1% of damage from deflected hits per stack. Tailwind comes with a Deadeye Ascendancy and is a stacking buff that used to be the absolute staple of the Deadeye. There's also a unique item that can grant you Tailwind. And the biggest bummer is the increased skill speed going down. It used to be 30% and now 20% only. Next, the base unarmed attack time is now 1.65 attacks per second. That sounds brilliant for a Hollow Palm Monk because it's all about attacking with your fists as quick as possible, then pump up your critical strike and go for these banger hits. With more base attack speed, it's even stronger now, unless there are nerfs at the bottom somewhere. Followed up by modifiers of the number of enemies required to be considered surrounded can no longer be reduced below 1. This is added to the game because of the constricting command Viper cap. It says require 3 fewer enemies to be surrounded. And this can go all the way up to requires 6 fewer enemies to be surrounded. Which means you could be permanently surrounded even though no one is around you and get all the attack speed bonuses, movement speed bonuses, damage bonuses, armor and evasion rating, all that kind of stuff easily. Followed up by Rage Regeneration now pauses rage decays similarly to other means of gaining rage. This means that your rage will never decay whilst regenerating. This ties with the new Druid Ascendancy Shaman that says regenerate 6% of your maximum rage per second. And if it's regenerating, you can't actually lose rage. And I would assume we might be getting even more rage related nodes in the skill tree as we're getting over 200-250 new passives with a patch. Rage changes go further though. All rage spending cost has been changed to 10 rage. Rage no longer causes a visual effect on your character until you have 10 or more rage so that you know that you can use these abilities. This ties in with supports like Rage Forge. Supported skills consume 10 rage if possible to deal 35% more damage. Or something like the new Druid skill Ferocious Slam that spends 10 rage to perform an enraged slam if possible. Probably used to be 5 before, but all of this is bumped up now. Then physical damage reduction from armor can no longer cause a hit to deal 0 damage. This is mostly targeted at preventing cases where multi-hitting player skills could deal 0 damage to armored monsters at very low levels. In these cases, the hit will now deal 1 damage. Lastly, igniting aura effects, including Ignited Ground, no longer apply infinite ignites. Ignite will pretty much run out now, then be reapplied. Run out now, be reapplied. Okay, this brings us now to the big one, the Ascendancy changes. Deadeye, Wind Ward has been removed. Wind Ward would grant you 3% less damage taken per Tailwind, which is a 30% damage reduction because Tailwind can stack up 10 times. Then Bullseye now requires called shots, and Bullseye applies 10 critical weakness. Bullseye is a skill that says apply 10 critical weakness to enemies when consuming a mark on them, and now in order to get to this, you actually have to take called shots. And Called Shots is the ability that applies a socketed mark skill to nearby unmarked enemies every few seconds. They pretty much go hand in hand anyways, and now they require each other. Plus, they added a new Mirage Deadeye Ascendancy passive skill, which grants the skill Mirage Deadeye Meta. Mirage Deadeye, while active, firing a ranged attack projectile will create a mirage that uses socketed ranged attacks for a short duration, then vanishes. You cannot create another Mirage for a short time after initially creating one. This is kind of like the Mirage Archer Spirit skill, where dodge rolling created a Mirage that would then also use the socketed ranged attacks. For the Mirage Deadeye though, we just have to fire ranged attack projectiles, which is actually pretty nifty. I mean, I could have another grenade throwing dude next to me while I'm throwing grenades. Love it. Now Pathfinder though is seeing some wholesale changes. They're removing Contagious Contamination and Practical Remedies. Contagious Contamination says the most damaging poison on enemies you kill is spread to other enemies within 1.5 meters. That used to be pretty damn cool. And Practical Remedies used to be a triple choice for immune to freeze, ignite, or shock. Then Running Assault now also grants cannot be heavy stunned while sprinting. Running Assault is the second one on the bottom, 50% less movement speed penalty from using skills while moving. You pretty much could keep fast zooming while shooting grenades, arrow shots, whatever. It's sad that we're losing the poison spread, However, you can now instantly go into overwhelming toxicity, which says double the number of your poisons. I don't need to have the second ascension, nah. With level 22, I could already have twice the amount of poisons. They also added a new multi-choice passive skill, which Path of the Warrior and Path of the Sorceress, which allows you to allocate passives from the Warrior starting point or the Sorceress starting point, and grants another 4 passive skill points on top, which means if I want something all the way up here, or all the way on the left side, I simply put 2 passive points in there and I can get there faster than ever, making the Pathfinder an extremely versatile class. Traveler's Wisdom now requires Pathseeker. Traveler's Wisdom says grant 5 passive skill points currently. However, these 5 passive skill points we now get with the Pathseeker. What they're changing is that Traveler's Wisdom now instead grants attribute passive skills offer additional options, which would be increased damage, global defense, and cost efficiency. This means that if I now go for +5 to any attribute, I could still choose Strength, Dexterity, Intelligence. However, I could also increase my damage and my global defense. Damn. Pathfinder's sounding pretty nasty. I mean, first and foremost, I can start in the warrior tree, and then I can also boost my damage like crazy once I hit my stat goals. Holy. This brings us to the Amazon. Elemental Surge got reworked. Right now, Elemental Surge says, grants your weapon surges. Non-melee projectile attacks with that weapon consume surges to cause the projectile fire to explode at the end of their flight. This can be a cold, fire, or lightning surge. It now says when you consume a charge, trigger Elemental Surge to gain 3 lightning surges, instead of fire and cold on top, so only lightning. And then we get the Surging Avatar, which comes after the Elemental Surge, that used to say 50% chance for surges to suffuse your projectiles without being consumed. This is now when you consume a charge, trigger Elemental Surge to instead gain 2 cold lightning and fire surges. Wow. Which means either we're focusing full on the lightning, and or we go for the Surging Avatar and we have the full super wombo combo with everything. This brings us over to the Ritualist. Ritual Sacrifice Stolen Modifier duration is 82 to 120 seconds from gem level 1 to 20. Previously, it used to be 15 to 20 seconds. Holy, that's a lot of increase here. Especially since the Ritual Sacrifice is since the last patch only a one-time thingy. You don't need to put 4 points anymore to get the most out of it. Nah, you just use it and boom, 120 seconds of that boost. And quality bumps that even further up by 20 seconds. Holy, Ritualist is just permanently boosted with that sacrifice. Then we get Corrupted Life Force also has you deal 15% more damage to enemies affected by Blood Boil. Corrupted Life Force gave you the Blood Boil skill that enemies in your presence accumulate blood boils periodically, and when they die, the blood boils pop, applying corrupted blood to enemies near them. Which used to be so and so, but now giving you simply another 15% damage buff to anyone just close to you. It's actually nifty. Warbringer, Imploding Impacts now also grants fully broken armor you inflict increases all damage taken from hits instead. I think this is a bit bad wording. Currently, Imploding Impact says you can break enemy armor to below 0, and I assume now it's meant to just increase the damage we're dealing to the target. The Ancestral Warhorn minion summoned by Warbringer's Answered Call notable. Now more consistently hits close-up enemies with a second part of its slam attack. Very good. Warbringer has been anyways an absolute staple, with totems going super crazy on the Fissured Totem Warrior and those summoned ancestral spirits. Any buff to that, welcome. Titan and Smith of Kitava see more changes. First, Surprising Strength has been removed. That used to be the note after Crushing Impact, saying 50% more damage against heavy stunned enemies. Instead, Crushing Impact now also grants 25% more damage against heavy stunned enemies. Which means with only 2 points, we already have your hits are Crushing Blows. Crushing Blows causes a heavy stun on enemies that are primed for stun, and that 25% bonus damage. On top, we get a new Mountain Splitter Ascendancy passive skill, which grants every third slam skill that doesn't create fissures, which you use yourself, causes 1 additional aftershock ahead and to each side of the initial area, requires Crushing Impact. And since we love spamming our slam skills with a warrior and a druid, this could become an absolute must-have node. Okay, now to the Smith of Kitava, because that's a lot of text. Now, Smith of Kitava already becomes more interesting because of Heat of the Forge, fire spell on hit. This, with the new Druid Volcanoes, could already be very interesting that you run around, hit, Druid Volcano, slam skill, pop, 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 pop. Each notable connected to the Smith Masterwork notable now grants 200 armor in addition to its other bonuses. That would be you customizing your normal body armor. Each of these nodes, the one that gives you unaffected by Ignite, also plus 200 armor. Body armor grants more maximum life, also plus 200 armor. We're losing padded plates, lead lining, and heavy bracing. There would be no cold resistance, no lightning resistance, and also no 100% increased stun threshold. However, we're getting Kitavan imprint that grants 60% increased glory generation, pretty massive. Then we get spiked plates, which causes body armor to grant 100% increased thorns damage. Fellow creator Keltoric should love that for his thorns builds. And then we get the tribute to Utula, which causes body armor to grant 30% increased spirit. Oh, damn. And the internal layer we have here that says body armor grants hits against you have 50% reduced critical damage bonus. That's now 100% critical damage bonus. Then we get heat proving now causes your body armor to grant the bonus of being unaffected by all damaging ailments. Previously just Ignite. Holy, that's pretty amazing. And the fire spell on melee hit skill granted by Heat of the Forge and Smith of Kitava now costs no mana when triggering socketed spells. It also gains 10% increased damage per level up to 200% increased damage at gem level 20. Well, Chad. A fire spell on hit, volcano spammer into slam skills, totems, or whatsoever, automatically just triggering the volcanoes by leaping around. Because fire spell on hit means if I leap and land and hit enemies, I could instantly trigger a volcano and then just keep doing my aftershocks and whatsoever to destroy everything. The temper weapon skill granted by Against the Anvil and Smith of Kitava now costs no mana. The combust triggered by its empowered attacks deals 25% more damage at all levels and has base radius of 3 meters. Now, no matter what they actually do to the temper weapon skill, it will just never feel good because you gotta literally stand still and go bam, bam, bam to have the buff on your weapon. It just is so counterintuitive to the zooming playstyle through the maps. If we could do this while we're moving, I think it would be good, like a shield slam. The manifest weapon skill granted by Living Weapon on Smith of Kitava now changes target less frequently and thus spends more time actively attacking. Additionally, as a maze now has a cooldown of 6 seconds for its slam skills, a quarterstaff has a cooldown of 6, down from 10 for sweep skills, and as a spear fixed the buck with the damage dealt while it was dashing towards enemies didn't cover the full distance of the dash. Same though applies to the Living Weapon as the Against the Anvil, they're still underwhelming skills. So the only advantage I see of the Smith of Kitava right now is to maybe mess around with Heat of the Forge and finally get something interesting for your fire spell on hit. Then the Infernalist says Seething Body no longer grants while on high Infernal Flame, you and allies in your presence gain 50% damage as fire damage. Seething Body now grants gain Elemental Arcane when you cast a spell while on high Infernal Flame. Elemental Arcane does not expire while on high Infernal Flame, lose Elemental Arcane on reaching maximum Elemental Flame. Arcane is up here in the Sork tree, and the Flame Arcane, for example, says 25% more fire damage with spells, converts elemental damage with spells to fire damage, cannot deal non-fire damage with spells, and spells have 100% more flame ability magnitude. Which definitely sounds more interesting than simply getting 50% of damage as fire damage. Blood Mage only gets Whispers of the Flash, also grants targets cursed by you have 100% reduced life regeneration rate, which still makes the Blood Mage an absolute critical strike elemental damage monster and also elemental damage bleed opportunity, which could work very well with the new shaman skills as well, like thunderstorms from the sky that actually bleed, wine hits that bleed, and we're going to look at it. Then we get the Stormweaver. Refracted Infusion now grants when collecting elemental infusions gain another different elemental infusion. Previously it was a 50% chance. That's amazing because there's a 100% chance now to get those. Storm Recollections now grants Renmans can be collected from 50% further away. This is on top of Renmans you create reappear once, 3 seconds after being collected, and now being able to collect them from further away allows you to collect them, already move away from them, but still be able to grab them again. And Multiplying Squalls now grants +2 to limit of elemental skills. This used to be previously 1, which allows you to put out Orb of Storms like there's no tomorrow. Our good old friend the Chronomancer has Inevitable Agony granted by Inevitability has been updated. It now ignores the curse limit, and it also causes cursed targets to take 50% of hit damage dealt to them while cursed again when curse expires. Previously, that used to be only 20% at gem level 1 and 33 at gem level 20. The Gemling Legionnaire can now easier stack up on maximum cold Fire and lightning resistance, you need blue support gems, 3 instead of 4, and the same goes for red and green support gems. On top, the thaumaturgical dynamism granted by advanced thaumaturgy generates a charge once every 5 seconds instead of every 8 seconds. It's pretty nifty. Now let's go over to the Tactician because I have a bad feeling here. The supporting fire skill granted by Unleash Hell has been updated. Command Death from Above cooldown is now 20, previously 40 seconds. Fires a volley every 0.75 seconds, previously 2 seconds, now fires 6 total volleys instead of 4, and has a 14 meter width, previously 7. Ah, damn. The attack damage though goes down. However, everything happens faster and you can do it more often. They also updated the strategic embankment. This one gave totems you place bonus auras. The artillery ballista no longer grants 40% increased immobilization build-up, it gives you 20% increased skill speed. The siege ballista is going down from 50% increased damage against immobilized to 25. Mortar cannon gives you more damage gain as fire damage though, 25 instead of 15. And the spell totem also gets an aura, which says spell totems grant 50% increased critical hit chance. Damn. Pretty cool. The embankment aura has been quite useful for totem builds. For the Witch Hunter, we have Witchbane now has enemies have maximum concentration equal to 30% of their maximum life, previously 40. This is a buff. Ceremonially Ablution instead grants Sorcerer Wood, also protects against physical and chaos damage. Those are minimal changes. What about our good old friend the Invoker though, which has been the absolute monk staple Ascendancy? First and foremost, and Protect Me from Harm get updated. It currently says physical damage reduction from armor is based on your combined armor and evasion rating, but we have 50% less evasion rating. This is now 35% less evasion rating. Quite good. Then, the Soul Springs Eternal now additionally grants meta skills have 50% increased spirit reservation efficiency. That's huge. Soulspring Eternal gives you meta skills gain 35% more energy, and now you can get even more of them. Then the Unbound Avatar skill granted by an Eyeshaw Rage has been updated. It has a cooldown of 12 seconds and gain Unbound Fury when you inflict an elemental ailment with a hit on an enemy. No longer has the no more than once every 0.2 seconds for each type of ailment, so you can just get more. However, Shocking and Igniting grant less Unbound Fury per Shock and Ignite. The Acolyte of Shayula is seeing a wholesale buff. The Into the Breach skill granted by Waking Dream has more Life Leech, Mana Leech. The Purple Flames last longer, and the Dream Flames are now created closer to the player, while you also get more Darkness from Embrace the Darkness. And the Choice of Power, Life, and Mana grant 50% increased effective Renments and 50% increased Renment pickup range. The only nerf would probably that your Void Illusion skill granted by Grasp of the Void has a 3-second cooldown charge instead of the 1 second. The passive skill tree itself is getting 250 new passive skills to the Druid side of the passive tree. This comes with a big nerf to the Hollow Pawn technique. It gives you now 1% more attack speed per 75 item evasion rating that used to be per 25 item evasion rating. Definitely going to slow down the monk, despite obviously getting a higher base unarmed attack time. They're also removing Walker of the Wilds, which used to be amazing. Mana Leech recovers based on elemental damage instead of physical damage. This is going to be turned into a lineage support gem, and I don't like that. To the gem changes, and here we got some of them going from dexterity over to strength or intelligent gems. While we're also losing the Fond of Rage support gem, which is quite sad because I love to put out totems or objects that then bump up my rage. All in all, the world drop lineage support gems are now less common overall, which is kind of sad, which means we have to go into the Atlas and really look for these deadly map bosses if you want our lineage supports. However, a lot of them are seeing a damage increase, or for example, the Zarik's Refrain gets another spell echo 3 instead of 2 times. All in all, the good lineage support gems we have been using become stronger. Now to the bread and butter skill changes. The Frozen Mandibles monster can once again no longer be bound as a Spectre. It's kind of sad because there was a whole just go Frozen Mandibles and go crazy. I mean, I've been even using it on my Tactician for the immobilization, armor break, haste, aura, stuff like that. However, buffed summon Spectre variants of certain monsters in each act and their endgame variants might be better now than actually playing those Frozen Mandibles. Then they fixed the acidic concoction being spammed on vine arrows for infinite crazy super burst damage. this can no longer happen because it cannot consume the poison or trigger acidic burst from inanimate objects. They also nerf buffed our friend the Ancestral Cry. It does more damage, however, triggers volcanic steps every 1.2 meters traveled. Previously, it was on footsteps. So every single step after the Ancestral Cry was like bomb, 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 bomb. I don't like that. Good Old Arc is being nerfed. It has 50% increased magnitude of shock. Increased is additive, where it used to have 50% more magnitude of shock, which is multiplicative. Armorbreaker breaks more armor than ever. However, we always use some kind of supports to break armor, not actually the skill. Ball of Lightning is being buffed damage-wise, wholesale. However, it has a less chance to shock. And the fire-infused explosions go really crazy, up to 1,116 fire damage at gem level 20, and it used to be 638. Generally speaking, a lot of skills are getting their spirit reservation cost down from 60 to 30, which is pretty cool, and gives the Tactician even more reservation opportunities. The Electrocuting Arrow for our Deadeye has an attack speed of 110% of base, so faster. It deals slightly less damage, however, it converts more physical to lightning damage. Interesting, our Explosive Spear gains +1 limit of Lodge Spears every 8 gem levels. Right now you can do 1, then you already have to play Overabundance to actually do 2. And the Frenzy Charged Explosion also goes up to 724% over 543. I am not sure if this is going to somehow make the Explosive Spear ever viable, but every 8 gem levels +1, that means at 16 I'm already have like 1, 2, 3 that I can put in the ground, and if I then get it up to level 24, with bonus ranks to projectile skills, I could actually spam that thing. And then with the Projection Frenzy Charges, maybe have a realistic playstyle. Because the Explosive Spear is cool, you can go for bonus range and intrigued. We are getting a nerf to Ghost Dance though. It has a maximum of 3 Ghost Shrouds at all gem levels. It used to go up to 5 Ghost Shrouds. And the duration between gaining Ghost Shrouds is now 6.1 seconds, and it used to be 3:05 at gem level 20. Quality also now provides bonus increased reservation efficiency instead of more energy shield restoration. Our Herald of Thunder is slightly getting nerfed, and I think that's fine. Herald of Thunder is crazy, and we will still play it on our Wyvern. It might be worth it though to play the Hailstorm rounds because they store 40 to 50 bolts instead of 20 to 25. They might deal less damage, but we're getting almost twice the amount of bolts stored in to then go rrd, rrd, rrd. We actually saw the Hailstorm rounds in the preview, and they were blasting. To the Lightning Arrow no longer bypasses the charge up time on Lightning Rod's burst. Instead, the burst caused by Lightning Arrow can occur once every 0.1 seconds. But projectiles convert 80% of physical damage to lightning damage, and that used to be 40%, which is definitely good. That being said, your Lightning Rod limit goes down from 20 to 10, and that's definitely a big nerf to that Lightning Arrow playstyle of just putting the rods down and then shooting the rods and then really fast zooming through. Good news for warriors, Perfect Strike deals more damage again, faster leveling incoming, and our Permafrost bolts actually pierce targets at level 1. That's amazing, because usually you had to play the pierce support to make them useful in the beginning. And holy hell, they're buffing Siege Cascade further. Currently, the quality says, additional effects, 80% more damage against immobilized enemies. However, Siege Cascade itself has now 100% more damage against immobilized enemies, and quality gives 40% more damage against immobilized enemies on top, which previously used to be this 80, but in total it's now going to be 140. And if you remember our Volcanic Fissure Warrior, well, that attack damage is increased. Fissures do even more now. This brings us to tons of unique item changes, which translate wholesale into things just got more. More resistances, more armor, more levels to skills, and also even more bonus damage. The idea behind all these changes, making more uniques viable. To the item changes, rune sockets have now been renamed to augmented sockets. And the important part here is that a lot of the runes can only be put in one single time. And that's actually a lot of the things. We can't stack them anymore, just one and done. Endgame changes, and the biggest thing here is that they're no longer increasing mob packs. Instead, we're going to have smaller mob packs that have more HP, 40% more, but they also grant 40% more loot and 40% more experience. This should improve the wholesale performance of the game, while at the same time not having you get flooded by monsters, and also not creating bullet sponges, because as soon as you reach a certain level of damage, you're still going to be blasting through, and now get more loot and experience without having to play with 10 FPS. Now to actually monster changes, and they're adding an anti-burst damage mechanic. Once a boss has finished, it emerges or becomes aggro, the damage reduction period starts counting down. The damage reduction tapers down from full effect to no effect over the course of this duration. For every unit the boss moves from its starting location, the damage reduction will fall off even faster. Bosses which cannot or barely move have shorter damage reduction period. This is simply meant to not have a boss spawn and then 20 million damage. Do we need this? Does this change much? Not really. It's going to add 10-15 seconds to a boss fight, and then you're still going to just vanish them. All in all, there are less nerfs than I thought there would come, and quite some intriguing changes to my favorite Ascendancies, like the Pathfinder. And also our Tactician now with the Siege Cascade being able to be even more deadly. Might actually go for a Deadeye to get the Mirage Deadeye, and then equip that Mirage Deadeye with a Siege Cascade, immobilize our opponents with Pin, and do absolutely nasty damages. However, first and foremost, we will play Druid as a Druid, with the Druid Ascendancies, with the Druid skills, and livestream that obviously here on the channel. What are you planning to play? And if you need to know more about Druid, there's the video. Take care.